Scott just made the point.
Jeff Jefferson,
used to be a lot more secure, not just.
When Paris exploded this week, I heard the early reports on radio, NPR and the BBC. News of bombs and gunfire at restaurants, stadiums, and concert halls did not prepare me for the shock of the leftist media coverage. I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. And men, the first thing I noticed about the news coverage was the apparent confusion among journalists about what might be the cause of multiple near-simultaneous attacks in the heart of a Western entertainment districts. We can't say for sure what caused this, they repeated repeatedly. Of course, they never used the words Islam, Muslim, jihadi, or anything that might indicate a particular religion or ideology might have inspired the carnage. Now, it's not that they're so committed to the facts that they avoid baseless speculation. A British reporter attempted to comfort her countrymen by noting that the UK has much stricter gun laws than France, implying that they need not worry about such cowboy antics in London because weapons are much more difficult to acquire at the other end of the channel. Ipso facto, it happened in France because it's too easy to get guns there. Another journalist mentioned that the attacks threatened to overshadow a climate conference, and that would be a shame, since climate change poses such a serious threat to civilization. And of course, we saw the obligatory tweets warning us of the real danger, that is the possible Western backlash against innocent Muslims. Here's one from Dr. Bruce Banner himself, the actor Mark Ruffalo. Don't allow this horrific act to allow you to be drawn into the loss of your humanity or tolerance. That is the intended outcome. Hashtag Paris attacks. Now, Bill Whittle, before you hulk out, and we all know your secret, can you empathize with these progressive leftist liberals, or as I like to call them, progreftorals? Because it's not their fault. Their worldview does not allow them to see this as a literal Islamic tactic to establish a global caliphate by destroying Western civilization using Muslims as bombs and thus to secure eternal pleasures for the martyrs and to usher in the reign of the Mahdi and the day of judgment when the world is purged of all evil. Seriously, Bill, can you understand why progreftorals think this can't be happening?
Well, the difference between me and progrestorals is I understood what you just said. I understood it. It's a historical event, it's a current political objective, and it's not just gibberish, it's an actual strategy and it's an actual goal of millions of people, if not hundreds of millions of people. So that's the difference between me and them. First of all, I know what you're talking about, they have no idea. So let's just take them one by one. The reporters who have no idea what's going on when multiple bombs explode in a nightclub area in Paris, to the degree that you may want to be a journalist and not speculate, that's fine. But once you start getting reports of Allahu Akbar, by not reporting that, you are harming the people of France. You're harming them by not telling them the truth. You're harming them because you are determining that you know better than the French people what the French people need to know. So that's not only an act of professional malfeasance and an act of professional dereliction of duty, it's also kind of an act of treason. The woman who said that the problem is not going to happen in Britain because they can't get weapons in Britain is just got it exactly backwards, but that's her intention. But the fact that there may be more gun control in Britain than there is in Paris means there's even less of a chance of somebody standing up and stopping this, the way that 3 Americans did on that train, where we would have seen 500 more victims to this Islamic terrorism if those 3 Americans hadn't been on board, unarmed, ready to take some action. You know, it's amazing what happens to people's ability to shoot you when you shoot back at them. It actually complicates their targeting solution significantly, although you wouldn't know that by talking to anybody who lives in the media world of the journalists. But I'd actually like to go to Ruffalo's point, because I think Mark Ruffalo's point is the most interesting point. In fact, as a matter of fact, I think Mark Ruffalo's point is the entire point. I think it's the entire argument. I think it's the whole battle right there. The reason that the Paris media or the rest of the media doesn't report that it's Muslims doing the shooting is because there's this general fear that we knuckle-dragging conservative right-wing death bots will immediately find the nearest Muslim family we can and take their children out of school and beat them to a pulp with bricks in the streets. But you know, the ironic thing is, we're not the ones that are doing that. They're the ones that are doing that. We are learning we're not only learning, Scotty, we have shown exemplary, and I mean extraordinary, remarkable restraint in this country, given the provocations we've endured since September 11th. But here's the big point. I agree with Mark Ruffalo completely. I agree with him completely. We cannot lose our tolerance and we cannot lose our humanity. And with that, I agree completely. But what Ruffalo and the rest of these people seem to think means that we can't fight back. And that is where I get off of this boat in an enthusiastic and energetic manner. We can fight back exactly. You know, we fought the Nazis for 3 or 4 years, and the British fought them for longer. And that didn't mean that we went through every single house in America and found every single person of German descent, put them up against a wall, and shot them. We managed to defeat the Nazis by having a lot of American Germans fighting against the Nazis. And while the big democratic ideal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, may his memory rest in peace forever, was the guy who locked up a bunch of perfectly patriotic Japanese citizens, we managed to fight World War II and beat the Japanese without executing them. And once this injustice was done, we find out that Japanese citizens enlist in units in the army and perform with exemplary courage, with extraordinary courage, fighting for America. We didn't have to kill every single Italian in America in order to fight Mussolini either. And this is where the problem is. The problem is that these leftists think that we are such savages. They have such low opinions of their own sense of self-control, which is why they hate weapons, by the way, that they think that we're just going to go in and round up these ordinary American Muslims who haven't done any harm. But that doesn't mean that's what we're going to do. If we don't decide to fight back against these people, we are going to lose. We're going to lose the whole shooting match. We're not just going to lose this country. We're going to lose civilization. And I can hold both of these thoughts in my mind at the same time. I can go after jihadis with a murderous sense of retaliation and exterminate this death cult from the face of the earth, and I don't have to touch the hair on a Muslim family that's working hard in this country and playing by the rules. It's not so hard for me, and it's not so hard for you, and it's not so hard for Steve, and it's not so hard for the 300 million other Americans out here that do this every single day.
Well, Stephen Green, when you first heard about the attacks, didn't you immediately wonder who could have done it and why? Yeah. And then consider the impact on gun control, climate change, and religious tolerance?
No, I had to have the mainstream media spoon-feed those things to me over the weekend in an effort to distract from President Obama's utter failure to deal with this threat. That's exactly what that is and was. And they've been helping him do that, especially since that disastrous press conference, which we'll cover in another trifecta this week. Listen, I got the news just like everybody else did on Friday afternoon. And I fell into this business kind of accidentally. I started a blog a number of years ago, and blogging, you respond instantly to the news. It was Andrew Sullivan who coined the word Instapundit, and Glenn Reynolds took that and ran with it, and I was one of those early followers back in early 2002. So responding instantly to the news, just boom, 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 boom. That's my bread and butter. I live in that place, but I couldn't write about this on Friday night. I sent out one tweet that I think it's been passed around a couple thousand times now, that if the French respond like they should, they'll be labeled fascists, and if they don't, then the fascists will continue murdering them, and that's what this really comes down to for the left, I think. But I didn't write about it other than that on Friday or on Saturday, because there was a report that I heard coming out of that theater where those 100 hostages were. They were begging for the police to come in, for the military to come in and raid that place regardless of casualties, because the terrorists were executing them one by one, just going down the line, shooting them in the head. And they were in there begging, please, please rescue some of us, kill these guys before they kill us all, because that's what was going on. And I was so shaken by that. I spent Saturday not thinking about it. I took my family to an Air Force Falcons football game. I spent Saturday night on a lovely date with my wife, and by Sunday noontime, I had rested. The anger, all of that was calm. I put out a column. I hope it was something thoughtful. And this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. Not get suckered in to these left-wing diatribes about how this is our fault or it's the climate's fault. No. ISIS kills us not because they're lashing out because we're beating them. We're not. They kill us because they want us dead. That's what it comes down to. We can talk about our common humanity all we want, but the fact is that these guys have divorced themselves from our common humanity, and they need to be treated as such.
I have to add one
Bill,
thing.
did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just have
Go
to
ahead.
add one thing, and it's got to do with the footage that we just showed of the back alley of people running for their lives, dead bodies in the streets, and wounded or dead people being dragged out of there. Scotty, when I first saw this footage, the second I saw this footage, my first reaction was, this is why I own an AR-15 with a 5-power scope. This is why. Exactly why. If one of those sons of bitches had come out of there with an AK-47, that guy was going to die. And if I'd sat there and heard gunshots continuing, I would have taken those weapons and I would have gone in that door, and I don't care whether you believe me or not. If you think I'm going to just sit there and watch people get murdered in front of my eyes, you got another thing coming. And that is the fundamental difference between this country and that country and the rest of Europe, for that matter. And by God, how you can watch this and not decide that a people need to arm themselves against these kind of savages is beyond my ability to comprehend.
Well, the early coverage of the attacks on Paris offers hope that journalists can get to the truth by a process of elimination when they've exhausted every other interpretation. But I suppose hope springs eternal. My favorite interview was with a guy who had been in the Stade de France during the soccer game. The reporter asked him what he thought when he heard the explosion. He said, and I paraphrase, "I thought it's a bomb, a Muslim terror attack. I knew this was coming." Now, the reporter seemed confused and asked again what was going through his mind in the early moments after the explosion. And the guy said, and again, I paraphrase, "I usually carry a concealed handgun, but I didn't bring it because they're not allowed in the stadium." He then said that his first thought was, and I quote, "I don't have my gun." The reporter seemed taken aback, and the interview ended shortly. But I had a sense that the journalist didn't even notice the scatological language. Rather, he was shocked that a man in Europe actually wished that he had his personal firearm during a Muslim terrorist attack. You know, for decades, astronomers in SETI have been scanning the heavens for audio signals to discover alien civilizations on other planets. Might I respectfully suggest that SETI scientists turn their giant listening dishes toward Washington, D.C., or London if they want to hear aliens. Wait, I'm now being told that SETI stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Never mind.
Yeah.
For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV, I'm Scott Ott.